Hey smart people, Toby Salami here. In this video, I'm going to show you how you can implement something like this. If I refresh this page, you see for each of these cards here that you have this kind of loader animation going on. I'm going to refresh again so you can take a look at it. It's a kind of skeleton loader feel for the listing items being loaded, and it just makes your listing items and the loading look a lot more sleek. This is particularly done for this listing. And as you can see, it follows the structure of the listing grid item cards. And you can make use of this in any project of your choice, as long as what you use to build your listings has a lazy load functionality. This skeleton loader animation you see here is not native to JetEngine, but I'm going to show you just how you can build this and make your listing grids look a lot more beautiful while you keep the user waiting for the listing items to load up. Now, every single tool I show you how to make use of here will be for free, and you can of course make use of them to your heart's content. But before we go on, I want to implore you to please subscribe to this YouTube channel if you want to see content just like this on a weekly basis. My name remains Toby Salami. Please hit the like button on this video so it gets to more people, and let's get started, shall we? Let's start from where it all begins. You can make use of any page builder of your choice. This is entirely your choice. Whether you make use of Elementor or Bricks Builder or Gutenberg, it's entirely your choice. All you need to be sure of is that whatever plugin, such as JetEngine, that you make use of to handle your listings on the site should be able to have a lazy load functionality. That's why I'm making use of JetEngine, because on page load, the listing items don't quite load into the page just yet, until after the page is fully loaded, and then it goes ahead to fetch that from the server and bring it on the page. Now that wait time is what we're trying to make to look beautiful. Right now I just have JetSmart filters installed on the side so that I can, give you that filter feel of when you try to filter items and make them look as good as you want them to. But that's not my concern in this video. My concern in this video is to show you how to get rid of what you see, that lazy load animation right there, and just give you something that looks a lot more beautiful than that looks. Okay, so let's get it done. The first step here is, of course, to get these things on the page. Whatever your listing is, just get your final design right. Now, once your design is right, this is how your final design is going to look, then it's going to be time to start designing what we'll be showing while the listing items are loading, right? So to do this, you want to screenshot this page. That's your first step. Screenshot the page. For me, I'm going to make use of Share X to screenshot it. I'm just going to grab a simple screenshot here. That's it. That's how it looks. Nothing too fancy. I'm going to grab the image. And the next step now is to take that image to Figma. Just launch and open a blank Figma file and meet me there. Now, we're inside of Figma. The first step here is very simple. We just need to put a frame on the page. Once you click on this frame icon at the bottom here, you can then click on anywhere on the canvas and you have your frame. Now, how this looks when you click on it is dependent on what your previous settings were. In my own case, the width here is 1920. The height here is 1080 pixels. Let's zoom this in. Why is it those figures? 1920 by 1080? Well, the reason is because that is my current device size width. Whatever your device size width is, that is what you should add inside of here. Some devices have a width of 1440 pixels. Please make use of that if that is your device. But this is mine, so I'm going to make use of that as a good starting point. Next, I'm going to just paste in the picture that I copied. And as I pasted it in, because of the fact that that is my device size, it just fits the image right in the frame. I just used Ctrl V if you're on Windows, and I just pasted that in. You can also use Command V if you're on Mac. That's done. The next step now is to draw what will appear on the page while the stuff is loading, okay? So to do that, let's just zoom in here to one of the items here, and then use that to begin drawing what it's going to look like in the end, okay? Now for that, I'm going to use this square tool here. You can see it, it's a rectangle tool, even though it looks like a square. Anyways, doesn't matter. Once you click on it, you can then begin to draw. Let's just draw a square all over this from one end to the other end here. Somewhere here should be fine. Okay. I can't see what's behind it, so I'm just going to adjust the fill here. Just going to click on the fill here and adjust this so it's a bit transparent. And that way I can see what's behind, and I can really eyeball this and, you know, drag it in, make it look very, very, very close to how the final result is going to look. You know, something that's just going to give me the illusion of this dimension while it is loading. Now, once I have that done, I want to use this radius dial that I see here to drag this in so that I can adjust the radius to look just exactly as the card looks. You can also adjust the radius here inside of Appearance. You see the radius here is 17. It doesn't really matter what it is right now. I just need to eyeball this, make it look as good as I expect it to. Now, the first square is done. The next thing is just to draw the rest of the squares over the remaining aspects of this particular card. You can either copy and just paste in the exact same place, or you can just do Ctrl D or Command D if you're on Mac. Okay? Now, once you copy that, you can see that, of course, after it's duplicated, you have another one just right above there. We can just try to eyeball it just over the meditation. As you can see, meditation right there. We can eyeball it over the terms just to create an illusion of loading terms too. And then we can drag this all over there, just like that, and drag this right here. So I can just create the perfect illusion right there. Now the radius is a little bit out of proportion here, so I'm just going to adjust the radius. I can just click and drag this to reduce the radius. I can click and drag to the side a bit. It looks okay. Now the aim here is not to get things looking perfect. The aim here is just to draw over what is going to be the final result and give that illusion of a loading. Okay, we can copy this over by duplicating it or copying and pasting, and then just drag it over and pushing this to the side using my arrow keys on my keyboard. I would assume that we'll have a maximum of 2 terms in each card, so that should be okay. We can drag this over by copying and pasting and just move this over here. We can adjust the height just a little bit so it looks very representative of what the final design is going to look like. And then we're going to draw this over what will be the dimensions of the title when it actually comes on the page. I can just drag this over here so it looks like a shorter second line. That's okay. We're going to repeat the same steps for what will finally be the excerpt down here by just copying and pasting. Okay, that's okay. Now let me just use the second term illusion shape here to create the button, because that looks very close to how the button is supposed to look. Now, this all looks good. It's giving us that illusion that we actually do need. And the purpose of our screenshot is done. We can zoom out, we can click on the screenshot itself and just click on delete. And that's gone. As you can see here, if you zoom in, you have something that looks like what we're actually aiming for. We have a background here and we have all of these items right here that gives us that illusion. But we need to do something more. Remember that we made it transparent just so we can see the back, like see the actual picture while we were drawing over it. We don't need that transparency. If that's something you can try and it gives you the effect you're looking for, please, by all means, do it. But for me, that's not what I want to do. So I'm just going to highlight by just clicking and dragging over all of these items. And then I'm going to hold shift and deselect the background there, this particular card illusion here. Have all of the others selected there, and I'm just going to click on the fill property here. Return the transparency back to the full transparency, and then I can adjust the colors to look how I want it to look. I'm just going to use something around maybe here. I mean, by all means, eyeball this, or you can also grab the color from the actual website and try to use a lighter or darker variant. For my own case, my background is black, so of course you would expect me to use something that's more grayish, deep gray, right? Good. Now for this one, I'm going to just reduce the transparency to 0 because I don't want the card itself to have a visible feel, okay? I just want that illusion of the card being there, okay? I can see that's the rectangle that holds the entire thing and gives it that illusion of being a card. So I can highlight everything here and then hold Control and deselect that particular one item there. Okay. And once I have that done, I can right click on all of the items inside of here and just click on group selection, or use Ctrl G if you're on Windows, Command G if you're on Mac. Now, that's done. What we have now is the background for our card and also all of the things that form the card items. I can now select both and then right click and click on group selection. So I'm going to make all of it into one group and give that group a name of my choice. I'm just going to call it card illusion. Something like that should be fine. After naming it that, the next thing I want to do is come to the export option on the right here and just click on that plus button. And instead of selecting PNG, I want to select here SVG. I now want to click on the export card illusion button here, and that should begin the export. You're going to click on a location where you want to save your file and just click on save. For me, that's okay. So once I have that saved there, that is good. I want to go to the next step, which is to animate that SVG which I just created. Let's do it. I'm back to Chrome and I'm going to make use of a free tool called SVGArtista. You can check it at svgartista.net. I'm going to include links to all of these resources in the description below, of course. Now, once you're here, the idea is very simple. All you need to do is click on Open SVG, because your aim now is to animate that SVG that we just created. I'm going to select Card Illusion, just as I have it saved there, and click on Open at the bottom. Now, once I click on Open, you can see it already animates the card for me. If I click on Play at the top again, let's see what happens. It animates it for me again. It appears to start slowly, so I don't want any delay whatsoever. I'm just going to adjust the animation delay here from 0.8 seconds to 0 seconds, and that should be fine. As you can see, once I hit on play now, it just animates it right away. Let's click on play. Now it animates it right away. This appears to look okay. I mean, if you want this to look even better than this, it's entirely your choice. Just tweak the settings a little bit, get things to work the way you expect them to. Now, this looks okay for me. This is what I want to be the illusion of each card loading. The next thing I want to do now is to click on Get Code. I have my SVG code on the left. I have my CSS code on the right, which is called transition code here for some reason. I don't know why. But since I have both SVG and CSS, the next step is going to be the easiest. I'm going to get AI to do the rest of the work for me. Well, not the rest of the work, part of it. Spoilers. Okay, so we have SVG, CSS. What we need AI to do for us is to ensure that this continues to animate infinitely. We don't want this to just animate briefly. You know, when you click on play like this, it animates and then it stops. We don't want that. We want to actually be able to grab the code and ensure that it animates infinitely. So I'm just going to get AI to do that for me. I'm using ChatGPT. You can choose to use whatever AI you want to use, DeepSeek, Claude, whatever. Pick any AI of your choice. It should do this. It's pretty simple. I also could teach you how to do this quite simply, but I mean, AI is fast, so why don't we get it to work? Okay, so let's do this. We're going to copy both the SVG code and the CSS code by clicking on both of them like that. And I'm going to come inside ChatGPT and tell it to do this. I'm going to say, hey, I have SVG and CSS code. I need you to take the CSS code that has animation in it and ensure that the animation does not ever stop. It continues infinitely. So don't make changes to the timing of the animation. All you need to do is edit the code so the animation continues infinitely. At the end, I'm going to include a particular prompt to ensure that the model does not include script, because sometimes it just believes script is the best way to animate stuff when CSS animations are just fine and they work way better and are more efficient. So I'm just going to say do not use JavaScript. Now I'm going to go ahead and paste in both that I copied. I'm going to first paste in the CSS there. I'm just going to remove this comment that comes along the code that I generated because it says it's by SVGArtista and I don't want the model to get hallucinating or confused based on that alone. So I'm just going to remove that so it's not a factor. At the end of the code, I'm just going to add a space. Oops, I made a mistake to hit the enter button. So I'm just going to edit that prompt and add at the end here the SVG code, which you find here, and that should be ready to be animated. So once I add that in at the very bottom of this particular prompt here, I can then click on send and see what the model comes up with. I see it came back with the code, but it has HTML in one place, which has my SVG markup here. And in the other code block, it has CSS. I'm just going to tell it, hey, put all the code in one code block. Then I click on enter and wait until it, puts it together in one code block for me so that I can then copy it and make use of it. Okay, it took a few seconds, but it came back with my code. As you can see it here, it starts with SVG and ends the code with SVG. So this is what I need. This is one SVG code block that can assist me to do exactly what I need to do. Now, the next step is just to hit copy right here. And now that I have this copy, I need to actually convert that to an SVG file. Doing that is quite simple. I'm just going to go back to my file manager inside of my local computer and we'll get it done from there. So inside of here, we have the card illusion SVG, which we previously created, but now we have a new one, a new SVG that has inside of it the styles that are needed to animate it, okay? So we're just going to create a new file here. We're just going to right click and click on new and say we want to create a new file. It can be a text document for now. That's okay. We're just going to click on it and open that text document up. Once we have that open, inside of there, we're just going to paste in what we copied from ChatGPT, right? Exactly as it is inside of ChatGPT. We're just going to copy it and paste it inside of here. Once I have that done, I'm just going to click on Ctrl S or Command S to save it and close that out. Now I have my SVG, but this is not yet an SVG file. It's still a text document. So what I can do is right click and rename this. Once I rename it, I also want to ensure to rename the file extension part here from .txt to .svg. So I'm just going to call this whatever I want. I'm going to say it's card illusion animated, as you can see, without spaces, and I'm just going to add .svg. And it says if you want to change the file name extension and that the file may become unusable, and I'm saying yes, I do want to change that. So I'm just going to click on yes. Now that is done. I'm just going to come back inside of my WordPress media library and upload that file right there. Let's do it. I'm now going to drag that from here to my media file. Just going to drag it inside of here, inside my media library. And you can see it right there, animating infinitely. It just keeps animating. And that's good. That's what we're aiming for, right? The next thing you want to do is just copy URL to clipboard, because your aim here is to make use of the URL pointing to this SVG. If you come back inside of here, for those of you who may have questions such as how will this affect the loading speed, you can see the size here is 3 kilobytes. That's very, very, very small. So it's almost not going to affect loading speed at all. And it's just going to complement it to ensure that you have an illusion of a loading card before the card actually is loaded into the DOM. Okay, let's continue. Now that we have the URL copied to the clipboard, we're going to come inside of the editor here and begin to make changes to some CSS. Now this part, I don't think AI can help us much with. We're just going to make use of our senses here and make use of some of the expertise that we've gathered over the years. And if you do not know CSS, it's okay. I mean, right now you can just follow up with what I do here, but I'm also going to explain the concept to those of you who understand CSS or are willing to learn CSS at least, so that you can understand what form I'm trying to take to get this to work the way we want it to. Now, what's actually happening right now is that in the front end, if I refresh this, what you have here is this loader here. And after the loader is done, then you have the cards just appearing magically on the page. But what you want is an illusion of the card loading. So we're just going to right click anywhere in the middle of this cards here and click on inspect. When we click on inspect, we can see all of the items inside of the listing grid right here inside the code. You can see Jet listing grid item. As you hover over each one, you know that's of course the listing grid item that's being shown there. But you also have the parents container here, which holds all of the listing grid items. And if we hover over it, you see that's exactly the parents right there. You see what's common among all of the listing grid items here is this class called Jet listing grid item. You can see it right there. What we need to do is copy that class. Our reason for copying the class is going to be made clear in a bit. I'm just going to double click on that particular element. I'm going to select only that class, and I'm going to copy it over, come inside of the editor here. And of course, as you know, inside of Elementor, you use selector to select whatever element you're currently writing the CSS on. If you're in Breeze Builder, of course, you use root to determine this, but either way, that's your choice. In my case, I'm using Elementor, so I'm just going to do that right now. I want to select the class, so I'm just going to use a dot and paste in that class name right there. And I'm going to open and close the curly braces because now I want to define my styles on each of these elements that have the class. What I want to do now is just hide them. To hide them, I'm just going to use the visibility property here and define that as hidden. And once I do that, you see all of the items there on the page, they're all gone. And that's okay. And my reason for hiding them for now is just so you can see how the background looks once we start making changes to the background, because that's our aim. We want to make the background to appear to be animated while this is actually loading. So to do that, we're just going to write selector again. And this time we're going to target the parent. We're going to select here the parent. As you can see, this is the parent item inside of the DOM here. We can just grab the class that says Jet Listing Grid Items. That's one class right there. We can grab that class. We can come back inside of here, put a dot, paste that in there. And inside of that, we can try to change the background, maybe call it background red. We see that that is actually being applied to the background of the listing grid. And that's okay. That's okay. That's nice. We just know now it's actually selecting our background for us. But we don't need it to be red. What we need it to be is to be the SVG. That's what we're aiming for. So we're just going to add a URL. Remember, we copied the URL. We're just going to type in URL, open and close a bracket, also open and close quotes, just like this, and then paste in that URL that we copied. As you can see right away, this is what happens. And it just infinitely displays to the right and to the bottom of the entire listing grid container. But that's not what we need. We need to define some additional properties here to ensure that this looks exactly the way we want it to. First off, we're going to start with a property called background size. So we're just going to type in here, background size. Now, what should our background size be? Well, this entirely depends on what your listing grid proportions are. For example, how many cards are going to show on a desktop? If they're going to be 2 cards, your background size would of course be 50%, because 50 multiplied by 2 is 100%, which would take the entire full width. So if you select 50% here, you're just going to get what your listing grid is actually going to look like in the end, because it's a 2-column grid that makes 100% in the case of 50%. But in our case, we remember it's a 3-column grid. If we take off that definition, the first definition there, we see it's a 3-column grid. We can put it back in, so we hide it again while we work on this. So because we know that, we're going to select here 33%. Of course, 33% multiplied by 3 will not exactly give us 100%. So if we want to, we can add 0.333, just to make it a lot more explicit, right? Now, if we take off this again and take a look at it, we see it's just hidden right at the back of each of these cards. And that's marvelous. But if we scroll down here, we see that it's not quite defined exactly the way we want it to. There is some spill outside of the container here. It's not exactly how we want it to. So there is another property we need to define so that this looks the way we want it to. And that one is called, in CSS background properties, we would refer to as background repeat. It's a background repeat problem. So we're just going to type in here background repeat. And here we're just going to type in round. When you use round, as you can see, it just nicely fits in the dimensions well. As you can see, this last place here where no card currently exists, it looks very, very close to how the card is supposed to look. That's okay. That's nice. Nothing is overflowing, nothing is too much here. It's just nice. So there is one more thing we need to do here in this particular situation before we go on, and that is to correctly define the dimensions. Right now, if you look at my listing grid settings, if we just click on my listing grid and we come inside of style here, you see I have horizontal gap of 20 and vertical gap of 22. I've also toggled this on to correct the first and last row issue here. Of course, this is a very common issue if you're using Elementor. If you're using bricks, you don't have this issue here. So you can see there's a small gap at the top here. I just toggled that on to remove that gap, and I don't want any dimension issues here. But my reason for taking you here is that you have 20 pixels as the gap in between these items here. And that's important for us because we need to take that also into consideration here. As you can see, there is a little bit of misalignment of, you see the button here is not actually aligned to the last one here. Call me a perfectionist, but I need this as close as possible to what the actual thing is going to look like when it comes on the page. So we need to come again into advanced, come down here to where we have custom CSS and just again define that. Now the background size is 33.3333333333 whatever percent, but we also need to take that 10 pixels on both sides into account here because 10 plus 10, 20, right? So to do that, we're just going to add a calculation. We're going to take off that 33%. Before we do that, we want to hide the entire listing grid again so we can see the background clearly. And we're going to paste back into this temporary definition here. We're going to remove that later on, but for now, let's just leave it right there so we can hide it. And we can come down here to where we have the background size, and we're going to take off that background size for now. We want to define this differently. What we want to define here is a calculated value. So we're just going to write calc here, and we're going to put in that 33.33333333%, and then we're going to minus 10 pixels because of course the gap is 20 pixels and that gap is in between two items. So we're going to divide that by 2 so that it gives us the exact definition of what the gap is per element. Because this background size is of course per element, right? So for each element, instead of defining 20 pixels, we're going to define 10, which is half of it. Now, if we click on publish and we come to the front end and refresh this, let's see what we have now. Let me just refresh. And what I have now is that illusion of the loader, but that is happening just after the loading is complete. Let's load it again, see what happens. The loading happens, and then the loader actually shows up. That's not the effect we're looking for. It's close, but it's not what we're looking for right now. We don't want this to happen. What we want to happen is that while it is loading, we want this to be showing. So it makes sense. Let's get it done. But first, let's remind ourselves of how this looks inside of the DOM. If we right click and click on inspect, and just take a look at how it looks inside of the DOM here. Let me come down here, take a look at the DOM. You see you have all of these classes and data attributes, all of that inside of here. And you see all of the listing grid items inside of here. But if we try to refresh, let's try to refresh, and then let's just stop it in its tracks while it is trying to refresh. And let's just stop it while the loader is still showing. There, we got it. So we stop the browser from completely loading the element here, just so we can see how the DOM looks before the items come on the page. And I think this is going to give us a pretty good idea. So we can come here. Again, we're going to select this icon right here and select that loader right there and see how things look. You can see we have the same class, JetListingGrid. We can see JetListingGrid lazy load right here. That's okay. We can see JetListing right here. We can also see JetListingGrid loading. So what this means is that while this is loading, the JetListingGrid class is appended to this element here. And then once the loading is complete, that class is removed. Now that we know that, we can base our CSS rule on this particular class. We can just copy it, copy that final class right there, JetListingGrid loading. We can come back inside of the editor here. Now, instead of using this class, this JetListingGrid items class, which only appears to come on in the DOM when the items in the listing have appeared on the page, we should instead use the class that only shows temporarily to indicate that loading. So we can just replace that with this, JetListingGrid loading, and it disappears from here. Why? Because of course, this is not currently loading, it's currently fully loaded. So Let's take off this particular one, this first property that we used to just hide the listing grid items while we worked on this. Once we take it off, we can click on Publish. We can come to the front end now and take a look at this again. Now, we want it to fully load. Once we try to refresh, what we see is that there is something there. I don't know if you noticed, but let's refresh again. You can just see it there. I'm going to pause the video here and show it to you. Right there. You see it there? Those two things indicate that it's loading right there, but it's not showing the right dimensions. And that's because when it is loading, as you can see, the loader class, which we made use of here, this jet listing grid loading class, which we made use of inside of here, only shows in a very, very small dimension before the actual listing grid items load up. So we need to define a kind of minimum height for this to work. We know how this should be. We know what the minimum height of this should be. We can easily determine that. We can expand this up a bit, use this particular icon here and just point to any middle of this, come up to the parent here and ensure you're selecting the parent. Once you're selecting the parent and you can see it highlighted right there, you can then tell what the dimensions of this stuff is going to be. How do you tell it? You just come inside of, instead of coming to the Style tab here, come inside of the Computer tab, scroll, let's bring this up a bit so we can see what we're dealing with here. You can see the width followed by the height. You can see the height there is 1337.670. You can see it right there. We can use that as the minimum height so that we can have this show in good, accurate dimensions. Okay, let's do that. 1337.670. We can come inside of here and give it a minimum height. We can add a mean height of 1337.670 pixels. Very, very precise. At the end of it, of course, we're going to add a semicolon and just click on Publish. Now, if we come to the front end again and we close out this and refresh this, let's see what we have now. Once we refresh, we can see we have that loader briefly, but we also have the illusion of the cards loading. Let's refresh again, see how things look right there. Okay, this is nice. This is very, very nice. There's one more thing we need to do. We don't want that circle spinning stuff to keep showing there while the card illusion of loading is also showing. So we're going to take that off. And we can take that off very simply by just right-clicking and clicking on Inspect. And this time, when we try to refresh again, we're just going to stop it in its tracks. We can see that's the loader right there. Okay. Good. Now, let's use this and select that loader. See what class or whatever is used to determine that. You can see you have Jet Listing Grid Loader. That's the class right there. And we know we can target that class and then hide that while this is loading. So we can do that very simply by just copying that class. We can come inside of the CSS code here, still inside of this while it is loading. At the top here, we're just going to write again, selector. After selector, we're going to add a space, put in a dot, paste in that class name there for the loader, and just set it to display none. You can also set it to visibility hidden. Either one will work just fine. We want to come to the front end now and see that everything loads the way we want them to. I'm just going to click on refresh here, see how things are looking. We see we have that illusion, but not that loading spinner right there. Let's refresh again, see how things look. Looks okay. Now, that's good. That's very, very good. It's okay. But how about in smaller device size widths? We can do that. We can come down here. Of course, we see here that it tells us that in tablets, we have up to 1024 pixels. We can see it right there. So we can specify that. If you're inside of Bricks Builder or whatever kind of Gutenberg, you can also define or see what each of your brick points are supposed to be. Then you can write media queries to specifically determine how the background loader animation or skeleton loader is going to look. Now, let's define how it's going to look on tablet. We know for sure that on tablet, it's up to 1024 pixels. So we're going to define that using a media query. Of course, a media query in CSS is just you defining @media, just like that, and then opening and closing a bracket, and then inside of there, selecting what the maximum or minimum width is going to be. In our case, we want the maximum width to be 1024 pixels. So we're just going to type in the max width, and then open a column and say 1024 pixels. And then outside of that bracket, we're going to open and close our curly braces and then define our styles inside of there. We can just grab the entire style as we see from here, from this one, and just put it inside of here. We can then begin to make changes to all of these properties inside of here based on what this device size width is. Okay, in our case, we say it's 1024 pixels. So we know for sure that 1024 pixels means that this is going to be showing on, 2 columns instead of 3. On desktop is showing 3 columns. On tablet, which is 1024 pixels or less, is going to show in 2 columns. So if we want to, we can go ahead and take a screenshot and then go back to Figma and draw it again, animate it, go to AI, try to get the animation to load infinitely, and upload a new file, and then put that file URL inside of here. That's entirely your choice. For me, my single file here will still most likely work for this, since nothing really changes much visually in the card, so it's okay. All I just need to change here is that this is no longer the background size of 33.33%, because it's no longer 3 columns, it's now 2. So I'm going to change this instead to 50%. I can also go inside of the front and check what the minimum height is based on the loaded cards, and then use that here to determine what the minimum height is for this. In my case here, I'm just going to leave it the way it is, and I know you get the point. If you have a third device or a fourth or whatever, it's your choice. I can just copy the entire block like this and paste it inside of here. We can see on mobile, it's 767 pixels. If we bring this down to mobile by just clicking on it right there, we see this is 1 column on mobile. And for that one, it's going to be, of course, 100% instead of 50% minus 10 pixels. So I'm just going to type in here 100%. I also need to define the particular media query here. This shows 767 pixels. I'm also going to put that there as 767 pixels. So now I have the 3 sizes for my 3 different sizes in my own setup right now. You can of course apply this to any kind of design that you want to apply this to. Let's just come to the front end, refresh this, see how things look. It looks okay on desktop. I can right click, I can click on inspect. I can then bring down the device size width by just clicking on this toggle device toolbar icon right here. And then I can drag this down until it's 2 columns, and right here should be okay. I just want to refresh, see if things look, as 2 columns on a tablet view, and it looks, just okay. It's not perfect, but it's okay. Of course, I can screenshot and begin to draw something here, particularly for the tablet, but this is entirely my choice too. If I come down to mobile here and just see how things look, by refreshing, let's just see if things look okay. They appear to look just okay for me right now. Of course, this is not by definition what a skeleton loader should feel or look like in terms of the code and code structure, but this is a very, very good workaround for when you know that whatever plugin you're using to implement your listings work something similar to this. I want to know your thoughts in the comment below. Do you think this is going to help you in your next project? How do you see this being implemented in your daily workflow? Let me know in the comment section. Also, you may just leave a comment, even if you have nothing in particular to say, other than to help me get this video to as many people as possible, because the YouTube algorithm just kind of loves it when people leave comments and likes and also share the video. As always, people, my name is Toby Salami. I hope I helped you a ton today. Please hit the subscribe button if you want to see more videos like this. And until next time, my people, stay dynamic.